Tonight, crowning glory. On our nation's birthday, visitors are welcome to climb the Statue of Liberty once again. I'm Jeff Glor. Also tonight, millions are applying in the online lottery for Michael Jackson's memorial service. What's next for Sarah Palin now that she's announced she's resigning as Alaska's governor? And Wilderness Warrior, remembering the monumental role of Theodore Roosevelt in creating America's national parks and preserving its wildlife.
If you showed him pictures and said this species is in peril, he'd say, "Boy, let's save it."
This is the CBS Evening News with Jeff Glor.
Good evening and happy 4th of July. We begin tonight with Independence Day, our nation turning 233 years old. As the nation celebrates and remembers, perhaps nowhere were festivities more rich in symbolism than on Liberty Island in New York Harbor, where something old is new again. Priya David explains.
The iconic Statue of Liberty, a solemn sentry in New York's harbor, is once again offering visitors the freedom to climb to her crown. It's been 8 years since the stairway to the top was closed because of fears the statue would be a terrorist target following the 9/11 attacks.
Just like we opened the Capitol and we opened Washington Monument, it should have been opened years ago.
The Statue of Liberty opened in 1886 and for decades was the first symbol of American freedom immigrants saw. Each year, more than 2 million visitors come here.
We've taken some steps to make it safer.
National Park Ranger Dave Denham gave us a tour of the island and the statue's many features, none brighter than the gold leaf torch.
Well, that torch, that beacon, that light is a light that shines not just for America, but for the whole world, and it's the idea of freedom itself.
No visitors have gone to the torch since 1916. Since 2004, they've been allowed as high as the statue's size 879 sandals.
You're up about 150 feet.
Okay, and now people can go how far?
Now you can go up about another 125 feet.
The stairways have been renovated with more handrails and ventilation, but it's still 354 steps to the top.
But honestly, the stairs are narrow, they're steep, and there are a lot of them.
Visits to the crown are now by reservation only, limited to 30 people an hour. Everyone who gets inside the statue must pass through airport-style security twice. This morning, this was the first group up.
I was feeling really claustrophobic.
Love was in the air for one couple. She said yes.
I hereby declare honor.
Lady Liberty's promise of a new beginning was honored with a special swearing in of these 7 servicemen from 7 different countries.
So much of what has made America great is the diversity of this country and the bringing together the people of diverse backgrounds.
Newly minted citizens, seeing America as truly their own for the first time. Priya David, CBS News, New York.
The memorial service for Michael Jackson is still 3 days away, but already the number of attempts to register online for tickets is well into the millions. Bill Whitaker is in Los Angeles tonight with more on that. Bill, good evening to you.
Good evening, Jeff. So many fans want to come here for Michael Jackson's memorial service that one website calculated they have a 0.4% chance of getting a ticket, which means they're more likely to be struck by lightning. Just the chance to register online for a ticket to Michael Jackson's memorial service could make your day.
And I just kept submitting, and then you got on too, let's go, baby, she got it.
Or more likely, it ruined your day.
I'm calling everyone I know to please register for me. I have to be there. I have to be there. He meant so much to me.
11,000 tickets to attend the tribute at the Staples Center Tuesday with Jackson's family and famous friends like Diana Ross and Elizabeth Taylor. 6,500 more fans get to watch on screens at the Nokia Theater next door. When the website opened yesterday, it was inundated with 4 million hits in the first hour and a half. So many, it crashed. Fans are crying, but city officials show little sympathy.
If you do not have a ticket, not only will you not be allowed at these venues, you will not be allowed in this area.
Predictably, if tacky, the tickets are the hottest item in town, going for up to $10,000 on eBay, even though the memorial site clearly states tickets are non-transferable, resale not permitted. Police plan to cordon off the Staples Center and urge non-ticketed fans to stay home. But just in case, this cash-strapped city will tap emergency funds to pay for police and crowd control. Some maxed-out taxpayers are asking why the public must pay for a private service.
I did place a call to try to speak to some representative of the Jackson family to see if I could reach out to their family and friends to see if there were people there interested in making a contribution.
Nature abhors a vacuum. And so do Michael Jackson fans. In the absence of real information about the King of Pop's burial, reporters and satellite trucks line the road to Forest Lawn Cemetery, where rumor and tabloid chatter claim his final resting place will be. Meanwhile, the investigation into Jackson's death is taking a sharper focus. The Los Angeles Times reports today investigators are looking at 5 doctors who prescribed drugs to the King of Pop. Now, bags of prescription drugs were taken from Michael Jackson's mansion right after his death. Some prescriptions made out to Michael Jackson, other to fake names, and some with no labels at all. Jeff?
All right, Bill Whitaker in LA tonight. Bill, thank you. In scores of communities tonight, people spent their 4th of July not celebrating, but protesting. Taking a cue from the 1773 Boston Tea Party, they rallied against federal tax and spending policies. Terrell Brown has more.
Fireworks of a different sort this Independence Day.
I am as mad as hell.
Thousands of activists held rallies in cities across the country, protesting big government and big government spending.
Government's way too big, taxes are way too high, and this country is in trouble.
They're spending our money, our children's money, our grandchildren's money, and they're going to just continue to push this country into debt, and they're going to destroy the economy of America.
Similar so-called Tea Parties sprang up around the country last April to blast the economic stimulus package, a movement championed
Everything is big in Texas
by high-profile conservatives.
Many of the signs here blame President Obama for making the problems worse, but the people we talk to are just as upset with Republicans.
I've been a Republican all my life. I don't think I am anymore.
Political analysts say conservative Republicans are hoping these rallies give them the united front they desperately need.
The movement has certainly given fiscal conservatives something to hold on to. You talk to a number of Republican strategists in Washington, and they're all looking for ways to kind of grab that energy and put it into campaigns. So far, they haven't done it.
That energy Republicans seem to need now more than ever.
The last few weeks, they've taken a bruising with John Ensign, the senator from Nevada, Mark Sanford going down, and of course, Sarah Palin resigning her spot yesterday.
And we are in Boston tonight, Jeff, as you mentioned, home of the first Tea Party. That was 236 years ago. Organizers of this grassroots effort hope to go national in September with a march on Washington. Jeff?
All right, Terrell Brown in Boston this evening. Terrell, thank you. The big political news this week was Sarah Palin's surprise announcement Friday that she is resigning as Alaska's governor, effective 3 weeks from now. So with us in Washington to help put the week in focus is CBS News political analyst John Dickerson. John, good evening to you. You wrote an article in Slate where the headline was, Sarah Palin picked the wrong day to resign. I know this got a lot of attention. Can you explain what that meant?
Well, if you listen to the governor, when she made her announcement, she said she was sick of all the speculation, the media scrutiny about her life as governor. And if that was the case, the timing was odd because on the eve before a national holiday, that's usually when you drop bad news. And so when she announced in this kind of haphazard press conference, immediately the question asked by political pros and even by just civilians is, what's the other shoe to drop? What's the mystery behind here? There was no evidence there was one, but the way she announced this news suggested there might be some backstory.
All right, so we have covered now Sarah Palin's past. We're talking now about her present. Let's deal with the future. At this point, what are her options?
Well, she's got a couple of options. She's quite popular in the conservative movement. So if she wanted to test her national ambitions or test the national scene, she could go throughout the country, raise money for Republicans, build morale in a party that could use a boost right now. She's a superstar among many Republicans. Or she could take another path, which is she could become an advocate for some of the causes she cares a lot about. She, of course, is anti-abortion. She could also talk about improving the lives of parents of special needs kids. That would create a platform for her that she could then translate quickly into a political organization if, in fact, she decided to run for some kind of national office.
All right, John Dickerson, we'll leave it there. We appreciate your time joining us, as always, from Washington. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Jeff.
2 U.S. soldiers were killed today in a Taliban attack on their outpost in eastern Afghanistan. 7 other Americans were hurt in that attack. Coming up on tonight's CBS Evening News, the search for a serial killer in South Carolina. The hunt intensified today for a suspected serial killer in South Carolina who has now claimed 5 victims. All were killed in and around Gaffney in Cherokee County. Kimberly Dozier has more on that.
Forget celebrating the 4th of July in Gaffney, South Carolina. A killing spree has people here making other plans.
He said he was sitting at home with his gun, hoping this guy shows up at his house.
Police believe this man shot 5 people dead since last Saturday.
Yes, we have a serial killer.
The 5th victim, 15-year-old Abby Tyler, died of her wounds today. She and her father were shot Thursday night in his furniture store.
This is a very difficult time for the Tyler family.
The other victims are a 63-year-old peach farmer and an 83-year-old woman and her daughter, bound and shot inside their home. The local sheriff now has a task force of up to 100 investigators scouring this rural county of just 50,000.
We are still following leads. We have many leads coming in, still coming in.
He pointed out one problem this weekend is that every firework will sound like a gunshot in a town where everyone is on edge and most are armed.
Take the safety off, pull the trigger back, and bow, 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 and they done.
And the hunted are threatening to fight back.
We looking for you. The whole community is out looking for you.
One policeman said if they don't find the killer soon, people are going to start shooting at shadows. Kimberly Dozier, CBS News, Washington.
Next up here on tonight's CBS Evening News, Washington's front yard in need of a makeover and the cash to pay for it. For those celebrating the 4th in the nation's capital, the National Mall is the place to be tonight. The mall runs through the heart of Washington, but it's also at the heart of a big budget controversy. Nancy Cordes explains.
Each 4th of July, the National Mall sparkles like a jewel. But by day, it's clear the nation's front yard, as it's known, is in need of some serious yard work. Crumbling sidewalks, stained marble, even the reflecting pool, that civil rights and cultural touchstone, is a sad, soupy, algae-filled mess.
This is just the tip of the iceberg.
Stephen Lorenzetti of the National Park Service says the mall is overdue for about $400 million worth of maintenance, including $18 million to shore up the rapidly sinking seawall that fronts the Jefferson Memorial.
Well, 3 years ago, this stone here was level with the plaza.
Congress made a dent in that repair bill when it okayed $56 million for mall maintenance in the stimulus bill as part of a larger $750 million outlay of stimulus funds for the entire national park system. The Interior Department claims that will help create or retain 30,000 jobs.
So that was criteria number 1. Which of the projects that we currently have on our entire list for the national parks are going to put people back to work? This project here will put people back to work.
But those who opposed the stimulus package are particularly bugged by the seed money for the mall.
But you know what? It's not an emergency.
Texas Republican Jeb Hensarling lobbied successfully to strip the stimulus of mall cleanup funds, only to see the money put back in at the last minute.
This grass does look pretty bad.
Oh, I don't deny I would like more grass on the mall. But again, I don't want to borrow money from the Chinese, send the bill to my children and my grandchildren to help pay for it.
The administration defends the funds as an investment in the local economy. 25 million tourists visit the National Mall every year. That's more than the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, and Yosemite combined. Nancy Cordes, CBS News, Washington.
In a closely watched 4th of July competition, Joey Chestnut defeated longtime rival Takeru Kobayashi in the 94th annual Coney Island hot dog eating contest today. Chestnut chowed down 68 dogs in 10 minutes. Nasty. That is a new world record. Congratulations. Still ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News, remembering Theodore Roosevelt, the man who established our national parks. Finally tonight on this 4th of July, it's worth remembering that as millions head to national parks, those parks would not exist if not for Theodore Roosevelt, who left office 100 years ago. CBS News historian Doug Brinkley has written a new book about Roosevelt, and that is tonight's Weekend Journal, a conversation about America's first conservationist. TR went on these same walks.
Yeah, right where we're at now is his favorite woods.
Sagamore Hill on Long Island, New York. Theodore Roosevelt's retreat from his home in New York City and later Washington. It's where he forged a love of nature that lasted a lifetime.
We're walking along water here in his backyard that is now a National Wildlife Refuge.
And it's part of what inspired him to make sure that places like this should be around forever, for all to enjoy.
He believed what made the American unique and special was our wildlife and our nature and our getaway places.
He protected 230 million acres. That is a staggering number.
It is a staggering. It's as much land as from Maine down to Florida.
Including big-name parks, the Grand Canyon, the Florida Keys, Devil's Tower in Wyoming, Crater Lake in Oregon, 51 bird reserves, 150 national forests. 1 out of every 10 acres in this country.
He called it our national heirlooms, that the Grand Canyon is our Louvre, that the redwood trees are our Westminster Abbey, that the Tetons are our Taj Mahal.
In his new book, The Wilderness Warrior, author Doug Brinkley says this was before conservation was a cause, when the Green Revolution was still a century away. He was laughed at when he did this.
They thought Crazy Teddy, they used to call him. People thought that this guy, there was never a tree he didn't like.
It may seem obvious now, but setting aside the Grand Canyon was at the time hugely controversial. Congress wanted it mined for copper and zinc. And when Roosevelt protected Washington State's Mount Olympus, loggers were outraged. Not that he cared.
Roosevelt went so far as to say the #1 issue in America is conservation. Because if we don't save our own landscape, what are we going to have?
He didn't just save land from big business, he turned it entirely over to animals, creating the Fish and Wildlife Service and wildlife preserves.
He took vast millions of acres and said these belong to birds or these belong to moose. The big thing, if you had any interest in wildlife, was to get an audience with Roosevelt, because if you showed him pictures and said this species is in peril, he'd say, "Bully, let's save it, let's declare it."
Roosevelt may be better known as a rough rider and hunter than as an environmental crusader, but Brinkley says those different personas aren't necessarily in conflict.
The thing to keep in mind is that the first conservationists in America were hunters. They were actually elite sportsmen, and they would have hunting clubs, and they wanted reserves.
What would TR think of the state of our national parks today?
He'd be sadly shaken that we're not prioritizing them enough.
The government's massive stimulus package does include more than $750 million to spruce up national parks. Nearly $11 million will go to the Grand Canyon, which Roosevelt saved all those years ago. When politicians these days are doing something with decades ahead in mind, it's considered amazing. Roosevelt, it seems, was doing things with millennia in mind ahead of him.
And that's his genius. He was thinking that far ahead. We now, as we're talking 100 years after he left the White House, we're only now catching up with the green legacy of Theodore Roosevelt.
That is the CBS Evening News tonight. Later on CBS, 48 Hours. Russ Mitchell will be here tomorrow night. I'm Jeff Glor, CBS News in New York. Good night and happy